Let's talk a little bit about, like, how do we get together?
My story or yours?
The way I saw it is, you didn't like me when we first met.
So he came in and tried to get himself hired as a position that should not have been his. So I tried to get him not hired.
I came in from the outside.
I absolutely led that nice little revolt.
Betsy and all her friends wanted somebody that was already there, had been there for years, and they felt like that person had earned the job and worked their way up, and instead they hired somebody from the outside, me, for the position. Betsy decided to lead a revolt and got all of her friends to go to lunch at an off-site location and come back and tell the overall site leader that they were not going to work for this outside person, which happened to be me. Now, Betsy and I had never even spoke before that, but basically the way we met was she led a revolt against me to get hired.
I absolutely led that nice little revolt. Then I ended up working for him. So I had to like him.
So the next thing that happened is I sat her down and said, okay, I have this job now, and so now you do work for me, so we have to talk. We have to work through this. And so she still wasn't real happy about it, but we did talk a little bit. So a couple of weeks later, I decided I was going to take everybody to celebrate and kind of team bonding event. And of all places, across the street from the office was a Hooters restaurant. Now, I know that's not the classiest place maybe in the world, but Hooters had all-you-can-eat wings coming up the next night. So I said, we're going to take everybody to all-you-can-eat wings across the street. I got held up at work and had to stay. So I just called over, sent my credit card over there, and they all went over, probably still trying to figure out how to get me fired for all I know, but they were on my credit card. So they were all over there. By the time I got over, there were two guys and Betsy left. The two guys were telling me, hey, our wives are calling. We've got to leave and get home. It's 8 o'clock at night. They leave, and that left Betsy and I sitting there.
Yes, and you know me, you don't know me. So Alan's the very by the books, calm, conservative one. I am the not conservative, wild, crazy, gonna get what I want when I want it. And we sat there, talked, I had some drinks. He probably didn't have anything to drink, just so we're all clear.
I had one.
Diet Pepsi. Whatever. Sat there, had some wings, and then by the end of the night, I was in my head going, oh my gosh, I'm going to marry this guy. And walked me to my car, and I tried to kiss him.
She worked for me. That was not going to happen.
And he was like, whoa. And I'm like, whoa, like, that does not happen to me. He pushed me away, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is that? And so then we had our morning meeting the next day, and he's standing up in front of the meeting. And back then, we had flip phones. And so when you text, you had to go 1, 2, 3 on the A and 1, 2, 3 on the B. And I was sitting there texting him some not so pleasant things. Pleasant, depending on who you are.
Not appropriate.
Not appropriate.
For me to be in front of a meeting of, I don't know,
Yes.
40, 50 people.
Sorry, mom and dad. But they already know the story because they also know their child. And then every day that week, we would go to the late lunch because we used to get off pretty early. And we'd go to lunch like at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And then he still wouldn't kiss me, like at all.
She still worked for me.
At all. We just had these really long conversations. And then I think it took him like a week and a half to kiss me.
I wouldn't kiss her until I talked to the president, the site leader. So once I talked to the site leader, he said, prioritization, she can't work for you. So what I did was I took her and I traded her to another team for another person and said, once I traded her, now she's on another team. So guess what? She's not in my chain of command. Once she wasn't in my chain of command, he said, now you can date her, but I don't really want anybody to know about it. So I said, here's what we're going to do. We can date now, but we had to sneak away. So we would go to Richmond and sneak away to the movies and the dinner. So we'd go from Williamsburg to Richmond.
And we always had our dates like in the middle of the day. We would eat at Red Lobster at 3 o'clock. All of our dates were in the middle of the day. And nobody was supposed to know. So my 3 best girlfriends were the only people that really knew. And we had this like under wraps. We would walk past each other and pass each other notes in the middle of the day. And we were super, super secretive. And then our big award, like what was it?
Christmas party.
That was what it was. Christmas party was December the 11th.
It was on my birthday.
We came to the Christmas party.
We came to the Christmas party. We showed up. And the first thing that happened when we walked in together, everybody thought I was being nice and was her designated driver for the night. Nobody put us together like we were there dating together. They couldn't figure that out.
He wore Brooks Brothers shirts, and he had that person that had the cuffed pants. And
I was conservative.
I was the girl with the pencil dresses and the high heels and every single
fishnet stockings.
I did wear fishnets every day. That was for him because he loved the fishnets. So I did that every day. And then, so we walked in, and we were, next thing you know, we were on the dance floor, and we were dancing to Usher. Mm-hmm. And everybody was like, and especially him. And he's the dancer, not me.
Yes.
And then he never got off the dance floor, and people are like, oh my gosh, y'all are together? And I'm like, oh yeah. And
that was it.
That was it. We've been together since.
Been together ever since?
We moved from there. We left there. We went to San Francisco. Lived there for a couple years, went from there to Destin, Florida, and from there we came back here when we decided to get back into real estate. And that's our story. And we've been this ever since.
That's it.
What would you recommend for other people who meet in the real estate industry and then go on to date? And what would you say have you seen? Because you do know people who have went on and started a relationship in real estate and been successful, but you also know ones that have blown up in that. What would you recommend?
I've seen it both ways. When the power couples that I've seen that really do well in real estate, it's truly a 50-50 partnership. When they come in and one partner tries to say, hey, I'm in charge totally, and this is my business and my team, and you're going to work for me, I don't really see it work that well. One thing we did when we first started is we divided everything up, and our favorite phrase our first year was
stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. We would both look at each other. We laid everything out, and we said, okay, this is your responsibility. This is my responsibility. And whenever we disagreed on something, we'd look at the list and we'd say, that's in your lane. Stay in your lane. And that's how we treat things. That ultimately was who got the final decision. It was whoever's lane it was in got to make that decision. And that's the most important thing, I think, is that it's a partnership. And that we would always talk about important things, but ultimately whoever's lane it was in got to make the final decision on it. So I think that's important. Now, I also think it is great for real estate when both partners are in, because this is really a tough business. It's all hours of the day, all days of the week. It's lots of responsibilities at different times, and the family has to understand. People come into real estate for a lot of different reasons. The three main reasons they come in, I always tell people, they love houses. They think, I love houses. I love real estate. They come in because we're going to make all this money. There's tons of money to be made in real estate. Or they come in because I get to make my own schedule and work my own hours. Every time that I've trained people and look at people at the end of their first year, most of them are really tired of looking at houses. They didn't make all that money that they wanted to make that first year. They're probably in the hole. And as far as their hours, they have worked more hours than they ever thought they would have worked, and they don't control their schedule. Their clients control their schedule. So you've got to learn that the reasons they came in, those can happen, but they definitely don't happen in the beginning. And so having that partner that understands it is crucial. And I think we understood it from day one.
Right. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Valentina Lee. She came into real estate and she just absolutely crushed it. And her husband was a naval officer. And when he decided that he was going to get out of the Navy and come into real estate, he said, hey, I'm going to do it on my own. You keep your business. I want to prove that I can do it myself. And then this year, her and I were just talking the other day, they decided to combine their business. But they both wanted to say, look, I can keep my business by myself and I can do it on my own, before they decided to come together and join forces as a team. I love them as a couple, and I think that they wanted to seriously make sure that they could survive on their own before they joined.
And now they'll even be stronger, I think.
I totally agree. And I think that now they'll both go do the stay in your lane, all that kind of stuff, and they know that they can do it together, and it will make them a stronger couple. Looking at that kind of stuff and seeing couples like that are going to be super successful, you look at that, I just think that's a great thing, and they're going to be a great couple in real estate. There's several other great couples that we know who are just phenomenal in this business and have really strong done very
But
well.
we have seen ones that hasn't been good for them too, because, and I think the ones that hasn't been it's often it's where one has been in the business a really long time and the other one comes into it, and maybe the other one was really strong and powerful in another career, and they come in and they're not treated on an equal level. And if you don't do that, I think it can cause problems in the relationship. It's hard for them to see that.
We have a lot of masterminds that we do with husband and
Other
wife.
couples.
And we just have a lot of them that are absolutely fabulous. And then we see some and we're like, oh my gosh, you're a train wreck. Because they really, truly, they try and do the same thing. That's the biggest issue. We never, ever did the same thing. So coming back here in 2015, I did 100% of the buyers. And then we went on listing appointments together. And back then, he was doing all of operations. Then as we started hiring, we would take ops off of him. And he was back then doing all of the marketing until we hired a marketing team. And then we took marketing off of him. And then I was doing all of
contractors,
listing prep and all the contractors. And then we hired Vicky and we took all of that off of me. So as we have hired staff, we've literally taken something off of us that has allowed us to be better with our clients each and every time and just give that extra concierge service.
Everything that was in our 2 lanes, every time we hired another person, we said, what can we take out of whose lane? And then we hired another person, and what came out of that person's lane? And every time we do that exercise, and that's just how we've done it.
It's also allowed us to then decide that we were going to grow the agency and be there for the agents and help them grow.
Last year, when we decided to grow a company again, I totally came out of production. All that came out of my lane, and things like building a brokerage and hiring agents came into my lane. New things came in.
But when we look at some people and we see their production and how stagnant they are and how they cannot move, it is because they truly have just not learned some of the things that we definitely know. And all of that, when somebody comes to me and they're like, oh my gosh, how do you do? I'm very fortunate to have him. And that's what most people just don't have. It's somebody who has his background and the operations that he has. That being said, that's the dynamic that we have that the majority of people don't have out there.
We do work very hard, but we travel a lot. Our goal is to travel 1 week a month. So
a lot of that, half of that for us is for business because we do keep very sharp tools. And the other half of that is for play.
If you are going to work together, you also have to have time to play together. So make sure and make that time. We'll see you back at the bar.